Walter Overcoat here, you're welcome indeed to another edition of the programme. Later on, we'll be crossing over to Manchester to join Martin Logan, who's out and about once again with the Irish community right across the UK. Now this week, as you know, as part of a series of programmes, we're coming to you from Malaysia in Southeast Asia. And this week, we're taking a look at Healy Mac's Bars and Restaurants, a very successful business here, run by Liam Healy from Glenamoy. And believe it or not, in 2009, he opened his first bar and restaurant right here behind me. And it's a Monday night, would you believe it? It's 10 o'clock in the evening, and you can see behind me a massive buzz.
Liam, it's lovely to have you on the programme. Everybody knows, I'm sure, all over Ireland and abroad about Healy Mac's successful chain of bars and restaurants. But let's take you back to the beginning. Growing up in Belmullet, was it always your intention to emigrate when you finished school?
Well, in Glenamoy, I think, it's a small village, and there wasn't much happening when I was young. And when you were getting up, going to national school every day, there wasn't a lot to see. There wasn't even that many cars on the road, I suppose there was more flights passing overhead on the way to New York than there was cars on the road. We happened to be in a flight path for most of Europe, and they seemed to be always pass over our house in Glenamoy. And I suppose I was more interested in where the planes were going, especially when I couldn't find any cars. So when I hit 16, I decided I'd go to New York. So I saved up enough money from my pocket money that my mother used to give me. I went to Muirdex College in Belmullet. I used to get a few quid every week, and I saved most of it, plus a few quid my grandparents would give me in different times of the year. And I managed to buy a ticket to New York when I was 16. And I got my visa in Dublin, and I hit for New York, and I walked down to get the bus one morning, and I think it was around 6:30, and my mother didn't believe me I was leaving, and she finally caught up to me at the end of the road, a Volkswagen car behind me, and said, where was I going, So I told her to New York, and she believed me then, she believed me at that stage before I got onto the bus. But it wasn't, to me, New York wasn't the other side of the world, I had dreamt about it for a long time. So,
and of course, you had somebody in New York to go to. That was important.
Well, not really friends, more than family, Other lads from Glenamoy that had left, that were 3 or 4 years older than me. So I went out to one or two of those lads, and they were working, and I met them I remember arriving in Kennedy, I think it's Kennedy Airport, and getting my bus into the city. I was told what bus to take, and I was sitting outside the door of a apartment block when they got home in the evening, and I shared a bed in the hallway. One man was getting up in the morning to go work. I was getting up in the morning to 5:30. Another lad was going to work, coming home from a bar. So we shared one bed in the hallway for a few years.
You came back then home, did you? After that?
No, I got a part-time job while I was there at that time. I got a part-time job in a bar, collecting the knives and forks. They called it busboy in New York, and washing the dishes. So after my spell there for about 6 months, I came back to Ireland. And I went back again 3 years later when I was 18. And that time I worked full-time in a bar in New York. So that was my first time getting real bar experience outside of gathering a few glasses in Ireland,
After you came back home then, you decided you'd like to travel again, so you hit Canada and the UK.
That's right.
In a period of time.
That's right. Well, I went to Canada, and my uncle works in a coal mine in a place called Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories. My job was to take out the rock. I came back home then, and I put together some money, and I bought a share in a pub in Belmullet. It lasted about 12 months as there was no employment. There was nothing happening. And I remember on the 1st of January when the second year I was in it, or the end of the first year, nobody had come through the door at 3 o'clock in the day. And I remember I had the place clean and I had a fire down. And I locked the door, whatever I was thinking of when I was sitting down in front of the fire, I locked the door. And I put together whatever bits and pieces I had. And I left and I handed the keys in to my partner. And I hit for Dublin. And I got work in a bar in Dublin. It was a Donegal woman that used to own it. It was Foley's Bar. I worked there for a couple of months in Baggot Street. And then I went to London. I saw there was a job advertised in the paper for a job with McGinley Construction as a contracts manager. I did an interview in the Bluebell Estate in Dublin with one of the directors, and I got the job, and I went to London.
To do with the tunnel there, was
Yes,
it?
well, that was before that. Now, I got working for McGinley's first in London, and about a year later, we got a job on the Channel Tunnel, and then I set up on my own on the Channel Tunnel, and I worked there for 5 years.
And that's where you met your future wife as well.
Yes, that's right,
Lisa.
that's right. She worked for McGinley's in the office, and that's where I met her, was in London. And I suppose after a few years we got married, and when my first child was born, Laura, we decided to move back to Ireland. I wanted Laura to be brought up in Ireland, so we moved back to Cork and to Charleville, and I used to go over and back to London at that stage. I was home one Christmas, and both of Lisa's brothers married two Indonesian ladies, and they had some lovely furniture in their house, and I was asking where they got it from, and they were telling me it was made in Indonesia. So before I left for the Christmas holidays, they were telling me the price, what they paid for it and everything, and I decided I was going to go there and see was it true, because it was, beautiful furniture made of teak, very hard to find in Ireland or England or anywhere. So I think later on that year I visited them in Jakarta, and they showed me around, and I was lucky. The currency in Indonesia weakened at the time, which meant that there was more value to be found, and I started purchasing furniture. And then after a few months, I opened a factory in Surabaya, and we made our own furniture. And at one stage we had over 350 people working there.
And then the recession came, and
yes, well, after a few years of this, actually we're exporting to a lot of countries. In 2008, as you probably know yourself, there was a crash everywhere, and we just didn't get paid for a lot of the wood that we had sold or that we had delivered to companies. And it was hard to blame them, because they couldn't sell the furniture. Some of them offered to give it back to me, but it was no good having a big warehouse of furniture and worth nothing to anybody. So I decided things became quiet for about 6 months, and the end of 2008, I came up with the idea that I'd try and open an Irish pub. And because I could never find the right bar with the sport that we were looking for, which was the English League and rugby. We didn't even dream about looking at the GAA, So I opened a pub in 2009 in Cangkabuca Bintang, and that's in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and it took off from the first day.
And did anybody say to you at the time, you're crazy here? None of these people know where Ireland is. You had a majority Muslim population which don't drink, or alcohol is forbidden, and the people tell you were crazy.
Yes, that was mentioned to me. Anybody has said back home, they said, well, we thought you were in a Muslim country and it's very hard to get drink there, But there was lots of little bars, but there was nobody putting a real effort in to produce quality drink or food or show anything on TV. So I said, if we got it right, it would work. And we were lucky, we got it right. We did it right from day one. We put the right kind of a bar in, and I put all my own wood into it from Indonesia, from our factory. And we put the proper drink in, we pulled it the right way. From there, it grew, and we started showing the sport. We did the league, we did the rugby, and after a couple of years I got to GA, but at the beginning, it was just the English Premiership and the rugby, and that was a big draw. I mean, I was the only one that was doing it, so we had to turn away people at the weekends when it was on. It really worked. And the food then, I decided rather than trying to do Chinese food and Indian food and Malay food, I decided to stick with what we know best, our own Irish food. So I sent a guy in Ireland, a chef, to Ballymaloe for 3 months, and after he finished there, I brought him out, and he stayed with me for 2 years. And he put himself and myself put the menu together, and the menu has worked to this day. What we do right is simple food, but it's Irish food. And nobody has copied us yet, and I never tried to take on the Chinese with their food, or the Indian with their food. So our food is very successful and is in demand all the time. So it goes with the bar. It's not just come in for a drink and beer. It's people come in to eat and sometimes never have a drink, you know. The first one was, as I say, 2009. And after that, the demand, you know, there was people coming in taxis from the suburbs and from different parts of the town. And they'd always say to you, "Geez, why don't you open one in my neighborhood? You know, why don't you open one in my neighborhood?" So we opened the second one. And that worked. So maybe a year later, a year and a half later, I'd opened the third one. And then my last one was on September the 2nd, in a place called Bonsar, which is a famous part of Malaysia. It's one of the oldest parts of Malaysia, and there's a lot of Malay, Chinese, Indian there, a few expats, and you know, I didn't expect it to be as successful as you witnessed yourself. It was full from day one. The only quiet afternoon we have, or evening we have, is Monday evening. After that, the weekend starts. So we're very lucky there, you know.
And then you went on, of course, you opened in Ipoh, another city,
Yes.
2 hours drive from the capital.
Yes.
And then down to Penang, where we are now.
That's right.
And on the coast here as well. And they're doing extremely well.
Yes, well, I opened here in 2010, and this is in Penang. And it's about 550 miles or kilometers by road to Kuala Lumpur. And this place took off, and it went well. But it's a long drive from here to KL, so I decided there was a town halfway called Ipoh, and it had about 1 million of a population. So I said I'd survey it someday, so it would be a good place to stop halfway and have a pub there. And you break the journey and you get your business done as well. So I surveyed it one day, and we decided there was no good bar in it. You know, there was nothing in it. There was a lot of small bars. It's not a rich town. I really didn't think it would go as well as it had. So we opened a pub in Ipoh, and it took off, and it's still doing quite well. There isn't that many of an expat community there, but what we're doing, they like the food, and they like to come in for the sport at the weekends, and it works, you know. And I have met Irish people there that have surprised me, even people from Belmullet in Ipoh. And I got shocked, you know, I couldn't believe a man walked in one day at the beginning there, and he announces he's from Belmullet. I just could not believe it. And he said to the manager, he said, "There's no way the owner is from Belmullet." And I said to the manager when he came down to me, "There's no way that man is from Belmullet. This is in the middle of nowhere, you know." And both of us from Belmullet, which was amazing, you know.
And let's not forget also that you have Healy Max in Indonesia, and in
Yes.
Spain. You're in Spain as well as
That's
in
right.
Ireland.
That's
So
right.
big operation. Were you delighted when you received the accolade of being the best Irish pub
Yes.
outside Ireland in the world?
I'd say it could have been summer. I was driving from Mayo down to Cork, and my bar manager in P. which was the pub you're talking about, called me and said, you know, we got a phone call. You're after winning the best bar in the world, you know, outside of Ireland, best Irish bar in the world. So like that scene from Only Fools and Horses. I told them to feck off. They were telling me lies, you know. And then Lisa said to me, "You better call them back. They don't usually do things like that." So I called back the bar and I said, "Who called you?" I thought it was a wind up. I really didn't expect it. And they said, "Yeah, So they gave me a phone number, and it was the Irish Times in Dublin, and I called them, and they confirmed it. So I was really delighted. It was a great achievement for the bar, and it was a great achievement to get something that was the best in the world, that you had, that was actually the best in the world at something, you know, which was the pub, you know, so.
Getting away from the business end of it now, I know you're very involved in the Irish community here and
Yes.
the Irish Malaysian Society,
Yes.
because actually you were involved in organising one of the first St. Patrick's balls and the first St. Patrick's Day parade in Malaysia as well.
Yes. Well, Maggie now was probably the first woman to do the ball. Since then, the last 10 years, I have been the main sponsor of the ball in Penang. The parade, I came up with the idea, and I said it to Maggie, wouldn't it be great to put this together and be the first in Malaysia to do an Irish St. Patrick's Day parade in Malaysia. So she got thinking about it, and we started it off 7 or 8 years ago, and we've had every year since. And Maggie does all the hard work. I can't take any credit for that, except I show up the right time. When the weekend I should show up and help her with whatever I can.
I know you're very much involved in sponsorship as well with Irish events there, and a particular one that's close to you is the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
That's right.
You do a lot of golfing outings as well. A very
That's right.
lively expat golfing scene here,
That's right,
as we
that's
saw
right.
in Kuala Lumpur.
That's right, yeah. Well, Make-A-Wish is something that I like to see where the money goes, and it goes to the kids that need it, that have serious illnesses. And you can, you know, it's well spent. And an Irish lady about 10 years ago, Sandra Byrne, approached me. I couldn't refuse her. She was a hard woman to sell. So I started off, and I'm delighted I did since. And every year since then, I am involved and I'm sponsoring, and it's a worthy cause. So it's still going on. So it's great. And the golf is really growing and growing. In Penang here, we have a fantastic society every month, and in KL it's the same. And we go to different golf courses and we play, and we come back then once a month in both places, and we have a good hoolie in the pub, and there's a free floor for an hour or two, and there's prizes, and there's a great night's entertainment. You know, and that we're not great golfers. I'm certainly not a good golfer, but I enjoy the crack, you know.
A lot of people may not know this, but you're also very much involved with an orphanage in Cambodia.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Around 7 or 8 years ago, an Irish couple were leaving here, going back to Ireland, and they knew that for the pubs, we do a lot of 3 or 4 times a year. There's an awful lot of orphanages in Malaysia that are not covered by the government. So we started raising money for the orphanages in Malaysia in the different locations where the bars are. So this lady was aware of that, and she told me about her orphanage in Cambodia that she looks after, or helps to look after. So we went up one weekend, myself and her husband and my wife and kids, and she showed me 2 different places with maybe 30 or 40 kids. And it was such a moving experience. I just said to her, whatever I can do from today, I'll do it. And that was probably 8 years ago, and I'm doing it since. And it is great. I love doing it, and I love looking after them. The woman that looks after the orphanages, her name is Sukari. And when the war hit Cambodia, Pol Pot came into town. And I think it was 77 or 79, he killed an awful lot of people, all the young children, and she ran into the woods, and she was in the woods for 2 years, and eventually somebody found her. The war was over, and when she came out, there were so many kids with no parents, that she started helping children. Then when she got older, she set up her first orphanage. And that's the lady I help. She's genuine. She puts her heart and soul into it. And I really enjoy that part of my life in Asia.
If you're not busy enough with all that's happening there, you're going to take on an exciting new venture shortly. The Malaysian football home place is a stadium in Kuala Lumpur, which a capacity of 85,000, something similar to Croke Park. And you've been invited to operate the bars in that stadium. That's going to be quite some undertaking. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, it's a challenge, but it's the first time, you see, in Malaysia, they have no alcohol at any of their matches or any of their concerts. Nothing has ever, there's never been alcohol. And new management came in, they took over the stadium, and they have concerts planned and they have matches planned. So they approached me a few months ago through my general manager, Fazil, and they said, you know, they'd be interested in a meeting. So we went there a few weeks ago. We met them and we had a look at the stadium. I couldn't believe the stadium myself. I was never in it before. 85,000 seater, state of the art. I was in Japan. I've been at the rugby and I've been in Croke Park, and I've never seen a stadium as well laid out as this. So they asked us, would we do the bar, and what did we think? And I told her, well, you know, we can start off small. We can't just go in day one and bring 200 bar staff and 1,000 kegs of beer. You know, we have to start somewhere. So she's agreed to all of that. So we've put a plan together where we're going to start. We will start at the premium levels, and then we'll work our way down to the ground to cover all, because we never know what's going to happen. How many people is going to drink. It's a Muslim country, so if there's 85,000 people in the stadium, perhaps only 40,000 of them might want to drink. So it's hard to work it all out. So you have to get it right from the start. And we're hoping to start that shortly now with the coronavirus. We don't know when that will be, but she's penciled us in for, I forget the name of the band, she told me. The Backstreet Boys is right there coming. And that will be probably our first gig, doing the bar out there. So yeah, it's interesting and it's a challenge, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Finally, Liam, I know you're still very proud of your county and you promote it whenever you get a chance.
That's for sure.
And home is still very much close to you, Glenamoy.
Yes. Well, of course, I love Mayo. Doesn't mean I'm going to live in it when I finish in Asia, but I love Mayo. I love where I come from, and I think they're great people back there. Whatever it is about the west of Ireland, especially the Mayo people, you can meet them anywhere in the world, and without organising it or setting it up, we have a habit of becoming friends abroad more so than at home, you know. So I have a lot of Mayo friends here, great people and successful people in business as well in Asia, which is great, you know. You're proud of where you come from, you know.
Well, continued success, Liam.
Thanks
for
very
talking
much.
to us.
Thanks, Emma. Thank you.